Here we are again, getting ready to film another episode of U.S. History with Mr. Peterson. And just so you know, throughout this video, we're obviously filming during the day, a little bit different. So I got a lot of peripheral noise, so I hope it doesn't bother you. There's a lawnmower that's going to make an appearance here during the video, so that should be fun for us. Either way, I'll talk through it. We got a great lesson coming up for you, so stay tuned. Check you out on the other side. You're back. That's so exciting to see you here again at another episode of U.S. History with Mr. Peterson. As you know, I'm Mr. Peterson, and let's get into today's lesson. So in the last video, we talked about the establishment of Plymouth Colony and the Pilgrims, the different groups of people that made up the Pilgrims, and what brought them to the New World. Today, we're going to be looking at what historians classify as the other New England colonies that were settled during this period of migration of Englishmen coming over to the New World, many of them in search of religious freedom. So let's get into those different colonies. So 10 years after the Pilgrims established Plymouth, we get another group of people that are looking to come to the New World in order to settle. Things had gotten pretty bad for the Puritans in England. They had faced lots of government persecution. They weren't making any strides in actually purifying the Church of England. What they decided to do is they decided to form their own joint stock company. The joint stock company that forms is the Massachusetts Bay Company. And the Massachusetts Bay Company begins to recruit different people to go over to the New World and set up another colony. They elect John Winthrop to be the governor of this colony, and they receive a charter from the King of England in order to leave. The Massachusetts Bay Company was very unique in that it allowed their initial investors, their freemen as they were called, to actually be stockholders. And several of these stockholders decided to actually go and settle in the New World. You have this interesting new situation where the settlers actually sail over to the New World with the charter for their colony in hand. The goal of these Puritans was different than the goal of those in Plymouth. These Puritans sought to establish the perfect government that they wished had existed in Europe, that they wished had existed in England. They're now going to do it their way in the New World. So when they get to Massachusetts, they begin settling these cities. And in these cities, they set up government strictly by Puritan standards. It wasn't so much that you had to be a Puritan to live in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. You just agreed to that if you did live in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, you were going to live your life according to Puritan standards. So that meant things like going to church. That also had to do with the moral standing that Puritans believed every person should lead. Several things that were deemed too worldly would be cut out of activity and daily life in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. It was the goal of first Governor John Winthrop that the Massachusetts Bay Colony would be a city set upon a hill. Now, if that phrasing sounds familiar to you, it's because it's from the Bible. Jesus refers to the kingdom of heaven like a city set upon a hill. And John Winthrop believed that that is what the Massachusetts Bay Colony should be. A city on a hill, shining its light to all the other governments in the world, showing what could happen if people governed perfectly from biblical principles. Now, while governing from biblical principles is great, there were some conflicts in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that humans are sinful. And when Jesus spoke of the city on a hill, he spoke of an actual perfect kingdom that he was going to establish through his righteousness and through his sacrifice. Unfortunately, human sin is going to keep the Puritan colony from being everything that it can be. Also, you have doctrinal differences even within the Puritan camp that start to pop up that make people in the Massachusetts Bay Colony start to think about forming their own types of colonies. One of these people was a pastor inside the Massachusetts Bay Colony that had grown now to several different cities and settlements all throughout the modern day state of Massachusetts. This man's name was Roger Williams, and Roger Williams disagreed with how the Puritans were running the government of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. He believed that there should be some separation between the government and between the churches, whereas the Massachusetts Bay Colony, the government leaders and the church leaders either were the same people or they worked very closely to legislate the morality of the people in the government. Roger Williams believed that you cannot legislate morality through government orders. He believed that it should come from the heart of the person and from the work of the local church, and to be honest, he probably wasn't wrong in that belief. However, his beliefs and his outspokenness of his beliefs led him into conflict with the Puritan leaders of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Both these groups of people are godly people that want the best and most biblical thing. They just have different views on it. So in order to keep from any sort of animosity, in order to promote the public safety of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, all parties agreed that it would be best if Roger Williams left the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Bear in note here that the Puritans left England because they did not have the religious freedom that they were hoping for. There was no toleration for their beliefs. So they come to the New World only to say that the only beliefs that are acceptable in our new city on the hill, Massachusetts Bay Colony, are the beliefs of the Puritans. So you can see a little bit of irony here that is already kind of seeping into this government. So after leaving the Massachusetts Bay Colony and spending a winter with the Narragansett Indians in what is modern-day Rhode Island, Roger Williams gets on a boat, sails back to England to secure a charter to set up a new settlement that he is going to name Providence. Providence eventually becomes the modern-day state of Rhode Island, and Roger Williams seeks to begin this settlement on two principles: freedom of religion and separation of church and state. So while he began as a Puritan in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, basically Roger Williams turned into more of a separatist as he sought to break away from the Anglican Church and allow different Christian religious groups to worship God as they saw fit in his new colony in Providence. That's Roger Williams. Another key figure here in the founding of the New England Colonies is a man by the name of Thomas Hooker. As the Massachusetts Bay Colony grew, things were getting pretty crowded, and there were several people that had no problems with the way things were going in Puritan Massachusetts, but saw a little bit more room to grow on their own. And so a pastor by the name of Thomas Hooker led his congregation into the Connecticut River Valley. The Connecticut River Valley had several opportunities. Obviously, access to a river is a huge thing whenever you're settling land. On top of that too, though, it was a very fertile valley. It was much easier to farm there than in parts of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. So Thomas Hooker and his congregation began a settlement known as Hartford along the Connecticut River. Eventually, this settlement would branch out to at least 3 other cities, and eventually it would become the Colony of Connecticut. With their own charter in hand, the people of Connecticut also set up their own self-government. Their constitution was called the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut, and it was the first written constitution that was he's like right outside the window. And what was significant about the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut was that it was the first constitution for self-government that was written in the New World. So while the Mayflower Compact from last lesson is important, that was a self-governing agreement. This is a constitution that lays out an actual government for an entire colony. And that's what makes Connecticut known even today as the Constitution State. All right, so we've looked at Connecticut, we've looked at Rhode Island, we've looked at Massachusetts Bay Colony. We've seen the religious influence in all these colonies and how that impacted how they related with each other. Now we're going to move into one last colony, and this was again people leaving the Massachusetts Bay Colony not necessarily because of religious reasons. What they wanted was more land and more opportunities to grow. The colony that we're talking about here is the colony of New Hampshire. New Hampshire was also established as a New England colony. So now you have different colonies that are starting. You have the Plymouth colony there with the Pilgrims. You have the Puritan colony begun by John Winthrop and his Puritan followers that wanted to be a city on a hill, a group of educated biblical people that were seeking to do things the Puritan way. However, the Puritan way did not jive with everybody, so you get the colony of Rhode Island that is founded by Roger Williams, and then we move down into Connecticut with Thomas Hooker, right, establishing another colony there, and then finally the colony of New Hampshire. Those are the major New England colonies, and that is going to be a cultural region that is very similar, but it's different than other areas of colonies that we're going to talk about here in future videos. And it was in these New England colonies that many of the seeds for independence would eventually be sown, and you can see why, as it comes from a place that values freedom of religion, and also some who value the separation of church and state. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We'll check you out next time. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope they provide value. I hope they're helping you with your study of U.S. history. So if they are valuable to us, I hope you can return the favor by liking the video. Maybe putting a comment in the comment section. We'd appreciate it. Be always learning.